Hello, my name's Robert Walker, and this is a presentation for my paper that I plan to submit to astrobiology journals in spring 2021, and its title provisionally is Legally, Mars samples need to be sterilized if returned before 2040 or isolated from our biosphere for telerobotic study. We recommend wing plane above GEO. So I'll just talk about the basic outline of the paper very quickly. So if we look at this graphic, then NASA plan to send, they already have the sample cache rover Perseverance on the way to Mars. And then ESA is going to send ESA fetch rover, as well as the Mars Ascent vehicle in 2026, and as well the Earth Return Orbiter at the same time. And then the plan is to that the samples that were cached by the cache rover are fetched by the fetch rover, they get into space by the Ascent rover, then the Earth Return Orbiter returns them to a Mars receiving facility on the terrestrial surface in 2031. However, NASA has not yet started on the build of this sample receiving facility, and they haven't yet started the legal process for all this. If you're used to the Apollo missions, then you might well think that all this can be done quite quickly. If you go back to Apollo, it was returned on July 24, 1969, less than 7 years after Kennedy's speech. And so surely we've got plenty of time, 2031, more than a decade away. If you look at when biospheres collide, then you'll discover that what they did is most known now for how not to do it. And first of all, if you look at the quarantine, for instance, then you might think, what has quarantine got to do with sample return study? Well, they actually had quarantine technicians during the Apollo mission, because when they returned the samples to the sample receiving laboratory, then, for instance, on one occasion, there was a tear in the glove which led to 11 technicians having to be quarantined. And this is the way that, and this was what they actually did with the Apollo astronauts. And the Apollo astronauts, because of an executive decision that they didn't want the astronauts to get seasick bobbing around in the sea. So instead of them lifting the capsule out on a crane, they sent dinghies down there, and they opened the capsule door in the open sea. The inside was full of dust. They could smell it. It smelled like gunpowder. It got into the sea at that point. Then, when the astronauts got out and they tumbled into the dinghy after they'd put on this dive risk, throwing in their suits that they put on to protect themselves, to retain any pathogens. Then, of course, there was dust on the outside from the inside of the capsule. So the diver just then swabbed them over with bleach, which that doesn't destroy spores, and then they threw the rags of bleach into the ocean. And it was very naive back then. The entire process was like that. It was very. They thought they were doing things right, but it really did nothing to protect Earth. It was largely symbolic. So we can't use that. So, and then actually, and the legal process, and all that was done within just using the Outer Space Treaty. We now have large numbers of, we now have environmental laws that to protect Earth that just didn't exist back then. They did it under the very weak Outer Space Treaty. But we can't do it under the Outer Space Treaty anymore. And the estimate for legal process would be at least 8 to 9 years. This would be a parallel legal process with ESA, so that's in the EU, UK, Canada, and another legal process in the United States. I only can find an estimate for the legal process in the United States. That would be 8 to 9 years. And but that is very streamlined. Assume nothing there'd be lots and lots of international organisations like the World Health Organization. They would get involved, and there'd be many agriculture and fisheries because impact on the biosphere. So the legal process would probably take longer than that, and it's really quite optimistic. This is by far the most complex legal process NASA has ever been involved in for any of its space missions. It must be. And to complete that in 8 or 9 years is really rather optimistic. So if you are very optimistic, you'd say, well, okay, but they could do both at the same time. And the 11 years to complete the facility, which is the estimate for completing the facility, using the requirements of the sample return studies, then that would take you through to 2033. They wouldn't make it for the 2031 return. And then the legal process, you could imagine completing it by then too. However, the NASA don't know what they're going to build until the legal process is complete. Well, as well as that, I discovered while researching into this that the technology doesn't yet exist to fulfill all the requirements of the sample receiving studies. So NASA don't know what to build because we don't yet have that technology. And then to start the build, they have to do the enterprise architecture review and the enterprise service review for such a big project as this. And you can't do that until you know what you're going to build. And the NASA come as a proponent to the legal process. So NASA can't know until the end of the legal process if what they're proposing to build is going to be legally approved. And it might be changed. It might be the end result of the legal process says, no, we can't do it yet. You've got to come back with something better than that. So the two have to run one after the other. They have to be build starts after the legal process. And then that takes you to 2040, and that's where, and 2040 seems very optimistic. So that is really the essence of my article, and that's what it's all about. And so I think I'll just keep it like this. I'm going to try doing very short videos. So that's the essence of the article. And so the result is that either NASA is going to return it to, it's going to sterilize it, and that's by far the simplest way to do it, to do a sterilized return. And it turns out you can do that without severely impacting on the geology. All that happens, the quartz crystals go brown and halite crystals go blue. But apart from clear, in both cases, apart from that, the distances between the planes of the atoms don't change, hydration doesn't change, the radioisotope date doesn't change. And then if you look at the, if there's any astrobiology there, then it's going to be severely degraded anyway. Unless it's present-day life, or unless you're very, very, very lucky. But that's not very likely. Or you're able to search in situ, which you can't. Because we already have Martian meteorites with multiple biosignatures. And we can't prove that that's life, even though it's got multiple biosignatures. It's what seem quite clear biosignatures, but they could be produced abiotically. So it's very unlikely, especially since the Perseverance can't even search for most biosignatures. It's very unlikely that we return something from Mars that is recognizable as definitely being life, if it's past life. So if you're just looking at the past life and the geology, then it seems really no downside to sterilizing it. You're not likely to make enough of a difference to the sample to make any difference to either the astrobiological investigations or the geological investigations, so why not sterilize it? However, I will argue that actually there's a very high possibility of life on Mars and of present-day life on Mars. And so I've got a new argument there, and I think I need to present that in a separate video so it's not too long. So that's what I will do next. And so I'll just upload this, and then so the next one is looking at why it's very likely there'll be life there and how we can modify the mission to a very high chance of returning this life. And then the other side of that he's saying that if there is life on Mars, then looking at the possibility of something like mirror life. Synthetic biologists have looked very closely at mirror life. It has not come up in the planetary protection literature so far, as that I can find. And if you do that, you start thinking really very, very seriously about having to make sure that not even a single microbe can escape from your facility. Oh, and so I will just explain. So this is the reason why there's such high requirements on the facility. No, I'll talk about that in the future in the next one, as to why the right. So this is my overview of the whole thing, and the next one I'm going to talk about why I said that we don't have the technology. I'll go into detail about why we don't have the technology. I'll do that in the next video. And so I'll do a whole lot of short videos like this.